Hi, I'm Dennis van Kempen from the SAP Partner Organization for SAP Online Track. We're going to do a short session, 20 minutes, about SAP HANA Cloud getting started. Now, I've already posted a couple of blogs on the SAP community about the topic. It will take a little longer if we have to cover all the material. So what we're going to do here in this session is cover some of the highlights to give you a good overview and so you know what we're talking about when the topic SAP HANA Cloud comes up. Okay, here is a curiosity. I have a newspaper clipping from October 2012, the SAP News Center. SAP introduces SAP HANA Cloud, one of the industry's first in-memory cloud platforms. And when we scroll down a bit, we can read that this includes SAP HANA App Services with SAP NetWeaver Cloud and SAP HANA DB database services with SAP HANA 1. This was just before TechEd, and later that month, NetWeaver was dropped from the name. And as this was a platform as a service, a platform was added. So we get SAP HANA Cloud Platform. OnDemand.com came from the Business Objects acquisition and was reused for some cloud applications like Sales on Demand, for example. And this was before SAP started to acquire SuccessFactors, Hybris, Ariba, etc. So NetWeaver Cloud was also hosted on OnDemand.com. NetWeaver On Demand, in short, Neo, the Neo environment. And with the name change, we now had HANA.OnDemand.com. Today, still present in the URL. The name HANA was dropped in 2017 when the Cloud Foundry environment was added to the platform, and today this is the main app and service hosting environment. Now, SAP HANA 1 was just a regular SAP HANA database on-premise edition running inside a VM. A virtual machine hosted by a cloud provider. Lift and shift is what they call this. Still very common today. Most of the database services from the cloud providers are VM-based. That's the same for the SAP Cloud Platform. As database service, we initially had MaxDB, later replaced by a Sybase Adaptive Enterprise Server, now SAP ASE, and of course HANA. The HANA database service in the original Neo environment is a 1.0 release, SPS 12. Then we also have a HANA database service in the Cloud Foundry environment, which is 2.0. Two different versions using the same name, SAP Cloud Platform, SAP HANA Service. Both of them will be replaced by the new SAP HANA Cloud Database as a Service. Now, unlike all its predecessors, the new SAP HANA Cloud is not VM-based, it's container-based. And we may assume it runs on Docker, no information about that. But what we do know is that it's managed or orchestrated, as we should say, by Kubernetes. Now, you don't have to be familiar with all this container stuff. This all happens in the data center as a managed service. It's transparent. It's a management layer not accessible to you as a customer. Around 2018, we started to see the first container-based databases, the open source ones, in particular Postgres. But you can get Microsoft SQL Server in a container as well, for example. And now also SAP HANA Cloud. Okay, let's recap before we continue. We have had several SAP HANA databases as a service, cloud hosted before, all VM-based, lift and shift. Huge VMs, not very flexible. With SAP HANA Cloud, we have a container-based database, cloud native, which means much faster to power up, compute and storage separated, making it possible to add a bit of CPU, add a bit of RAM, and take it away again if you no longer need it. Some parts are work in progress. SAP HANA Cloud was just released March 2020. Okay, now how does this all work? How do we get access? Well, for those of you who have connected to SAP Cloud Platform before, and I'm going to assume most of you have, you know that it's not a matter of getting your credit card out, enter a number, and off you go. The Cloud Platform works with subscriptions and entitlements. So how does it work? Here I'm connected to the SAP Cloud Platform Control Center. This is a backend application, and here we can assign services and applications to global accounts. I've created one here called SAP Online Track. And if we go to step 3, assign services, enter SAP HANA in the search box, we can see that we have SAP HANA Cloud. It's in the Cloud Foundry environment. We also have schemas and HCI containers, and not to be confused with Docker containers or the containers managed by Kubernetes, something completely different. HDI stands for HANA Deployment Infrastructure here to deploy design time development artifacts into runtime database objects, tables, views, etc. Different topic. We discuss this some other time. We have the SAP HANA service. We mentioned that. HANA 1.0 in Neo, HANA 2.0 in Cloud Foundry, the old stuff. And for the latest and greatest, we select SAP HANA Cloud. There are 3 service plans: HANA, HANA Cloud Connection, and Relational Data Lake RDL, which is SAP former Sybase IQ. Well, based on the technology that is container-based as well, no longer the same product you run on-prem. If we do a web search, SAP Cloud Platform Regions and Services, and filter on SAP HANA Cloud, we can see that it's currently hosted by AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure. If we then open the SAP Cloud Platform Cockpit and check the available services for this global account, we can see that we have HANA Cloud. Then we would need to add the service plan to our sub account, which corresponds to a physical data center. The global account is just a commercial vehicle. And then we can enter our sub account. We need to enable Cloud Foundry, which gives us a Cloud Foundry organization, the org, with an API endpoint. Create a space, enter the space, and here at this level, we find SAP HANA Cloud in the menu. Now, if you're not familiar at all with Cloud Foundry, org, space, API endpoint, this all may sound a bit confusing. You don't really need to be an expert on this topic, but if you understand the concepts a little bit, it might help. I'll put a reference to the blog in the description of this video below. We already have an SAP HANA instance here. Click Create Instance to create a new one. How many you can create will depend on your assignment, of course. We just looked at that. Enter an instance name. This is just what will appear on the HANA cockpit. We can go from 30 to 900 gigabytes currently, and we see that compute and storage move along. There's a link to the documentation explaining what it all means, and the sizing calculator, so you know what your bill will look like. Step 3 is the data lake, and step 4, advanced. Well, it's pretty basic actually. You need to secure your connections. Allow all IP addresses would be a pretty rare business case. Only specific is to enable full client connections, ODBC, JDBC, Python, Go, .NET. Normally you would stick with the deny all and connect through the cloud platform. Create instance will start the create process, takes a couple minutes, and once it's up and running we can stop it. Edit brings back step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and in the future you should be able to make modifications here. If you want to delete your instance, you can do that here as well, and here we have the endpoint to the instance, a long string ending with hanacloud.ondemand.com. Encrypted SSL port 443. This you would need to make your full database client connections, for example. We can open our instance in the SAP HANA cockpit and the SAP HANA Database Explorer. These are pretty much the same as for the on-premise version, minor changes. We can go from the cockpit to the Explorer as well. The Explorer shows a SQL console, so we can enter our SQL commands, and a catalog showing schemas, tables, view, triggers, synonym sequences, the usual suspects on a relational database. But we also have graph workspaces, cubes, agent groups, all specific to HANA. Adapters is how we connect to other systems, part of SAP HANA Smart Data Integration. You can add additional connections here to other databases, or to an HDI container. If we go back to the cockpit, here we see a system information, HANA 4.0, running on SUSE Linux. Database backup is running. The moment we start our instance, the data is being backed up. You can look at the configuration, but as a managed service, this is not very configurable. As mentioned, what we're looking at here is actually a tenant database. So when we create a new SAP HANA Cloud instance, the system database remains under control of SAP. And if we return to a system overview and take a look at the overall database status, we see the daemon, name server, and compile server all running as shared processes managed from the system database. The stop service is disabled. We only control our own tenant database processes, the index server, data provisioning server for smart data integration, and the DI server for HDI and deployment infrastructure. With that, we're getting a bit much under the hood for a getting started session. So let's take a look at what information we have. First of all, there is the SAP HANA Cloud Services.com website. Here we find information about SAP HANA Cloud, SAP Data Warehouse Cloud, and SAP Analytics Cloud. It's a solution portfolio. For HANA Cloud, there is a newsletter you can subscribe to. Here we find some more general information about the product, topics like data lake, which we have not really discussed much, data tiering, multi-cloud, and connectivity, and data virtualization. In the info and guides section, you find an onboarding guide, highly recommended. There are 5 learning modules. Number 1 is getting started. We talked about most of that. Data integration, data management, advanced analytics, and development. It's all very relevant information. I highly recommend to take a look at that. If we open the guide, you find the concept explained. What is SAP HANA Cloud? The difference between SAP On-Premise and SAP HANA Cloud. Information about the trial once it's available, and the engine behind SAP HANA Cloud. In the same section, we also have learning tracks and webinars. When SAP HANA Cloud was released, we also posted a blog series. There's one blog that tells in a bit more detail the story of SAP HANA in the cloud, the start of the platform with NetWeaver Cloud, SAP HANA 1, all the topics we talked about. The other blog is a bit more technical, covers SAP HANA in containers. What's the difference? Running a database in a virtual machine versus running one in containers. How does it all work with Kubernetes? If you're interested more in the architecture, you might want to take a look at that. Then we also find SAP HANA Cloud Services on YouTube. That's where they post their videos. You can subscribe if you want to hear from them when new videos are released. I embedded a couple in the blog. Here we see Rudiger Call and Dominic Nutt, product managers of HANA Cloud. Then there is the documentation, of course. If we go up one level, here's the feature scope description, what's included. There is information about implementation, administration, integration, and development. A lot of stuff to read. Good starting point, obviously, is the Getting Started guide. We already looked at this when we created our instance and clicked on the documentation link. I should also mention the SAP HANA Academy on YouTube. A colleague of mine, Philip Muggleton, has recorded a number of video tutorials specific to SAP HANA Cloud. He just uploaded another 3 today while I'm recording this video, bringing the total count to 12. It's over 2 hours of material. Some of the topics we discussed today. How do we provision an instance? How does that work with the service plan on the SAP Cloud Platform? And also, how do we create a schema on the HANA Cloud? How do we connect the database client, ODBC, JDBC, Python? How do we bind an app? If we have deployed an application to the SAP Cloud Platform, how do we bind the app to the SAP HANA Cloud database as a service? How do we develop applications with HANA Cloud? Topics like that. I posted 2 blogs to go with these videos. and in the blogs you'll find the references, the link to the documentation, some print screens, just in case you want to look back and search the material later on. A bit easier to find. Part 2 is about the first 7 videos, getting started. Part 3 was just posted and covers in more detail how to work with the HDI containers, how to access data outside a container, in this case of course data that is stored in the SAP HANA Cloud database or the SAP HANA Cloud Data Lake associated with it. Here we see a diagram of the architecture. We also cover in detail how to connect with SAP Analytics Cloud, with the SAP HANA Cloud using the HANA Analytics adapter. It's an application hosted in the SAP Cloud Platform that acts as a piece of middleware to connect with the cloud instances. It's not very difficult to set this up, but there are a couple of steps you need to go through, and that's described in the blog, and you can see it in action in the videos. Part of that also is how to configure single sign-on so that you're not prompted to log on when you navigate in an SAP Analytics Cloud story to data stored in an SAP HANA Cloud database. Well, that's it for me. If you want to keep receiving updates, why not connect with me on LinkedIn, follow on Twitter, or of course simply here on the SAP community. Thank you for watching and have a good day.